It started like so many things do with a girl. Her name was Chloe. We weren't dating, not officially, but we orbited each other with the kind of gravitational pull that suggested it was only a matter of time. We'd met a month prior at a concert at the Ryman, bonding over a shared hatred for the guy in front of us who wouldn't stop filming the entire show on his iPad. She had this laugh that was half snort, completely unself-conscious, and I was a goner. She worked in graphic design, freelance, which meant her schedule was as chaotic as mine was rigid. I was an archivist for the State Historical Society, a job that involved more dust and silence than Indiana Jones-style adventure. But it paid the bills and it suited me. Chloe was my opposite in almost every way, vibrant, impulsive, a splash of bright color against my muted, organized world. That Saturday she texted me, "Found the weirdest place online. Vintage store? Not like cute vintage, creepy vintage, wanna go? It's on 8th Avenue." I typed back, "Creepy how?" Her response was instant. "The reviews are unhinged. People say the clothes talk to you. Not literally, metaphorically. Or something. I'm intrigued. Pick you up in 30? How do you say no to that? You don't. Especially when the girl asking has hair the color of dark honey and eyes that seem to change from green to gray depending on the light. Especially when you've been imagining what it might be like to kiss the delicate, almost imperceptible scar above her lip." 30 minutes later, her beat-up Jeep Cherokee pulled up to my curb. She leaned over and pushed the passenger door open. "Get in, loser, we're going shopping," she said, doing a spot-on impression of Regina George. She was wearing a faded Ramones t-shirt, knotted at her waist, and cut-off denim shorts that showed off legs that were long and toned, the kind you see on rock climbers or dancers. Her ankles were slim, delicate, and her sandals were simple leather straps that looked like they'd bitten into her skin, leaving faint red marks that I had a sudden vivid image of tracing those marks with my thumb. "You're staring at my feet," she said, not looking at me as she checked her mirror and pulled back into traffic. A small, knowing smile played on her lips. Nice sandals," I managed, feeling my ears grow hot. She laughed that snorting laugh. "Liar, but I'll take it." The drive downtown was all sunlight and loud music. She had a playlist that was all 80s new wave, and she sang along off-key and with total abandon. I watched her instead of the passing city. The way her hands, adorned with a few silver rings, tapped the steering wheel. The way the thin strap of her tank top kept slipping off her shoulder, revealing the clean line of her collarbone and the faint tan line from a different top. I found myself wanting to reach over and pull the strap back up, just to have an excuse to let my fingers brush her skin. The desire was a low, steady hum in the back of my head, a pleasant distraction. We found parking a few blocks away from the address. The neighborhood was a mix of old brick buildings, some renovated into trendy lofts, others still waiting for their turn. The store was nestled between a tattoo parlor and a boarded-up storefront. The sign above the door was simple, black lettering. On a foggy glass window, "Echoes." "Classy," Chloe said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. She pushed the door open, and a small bell chimed, not a cheerful ding-a-ling, but a single, dull, resonant clang that seemed to hang in the air too long. The inside was exactly what the outside promised. Dim, crowded, and smelling of mothballs, old perfume, and something else underneath, something dry and papery like a long-sealed tomb. Racks of clothing were packed so tightly it was hard to move without brushing against them. The walls were lined with glass cases displaying more delicate items. Lace gloves, beaded flapper headbands, tarnished silver brooches shaped like insects and serpents. An old woman sat behind the main counter on a high stool, her posture ramrod straight. She was knitting something black and complex, her needles clicking in a rhythm that was unnervingly steady. She didn't look up when we entered. "Hello?" Chloe called out, her voice softer than usual, muted by the thick atmosphere. The clicking stopped. The woman looked up, her eyes were a pale, watery blue, and they moved over us slowly, appraisingly, like she was estimating the value of our souls. She gave a curt, almost imperceptible nod, and the clicking resumed. "Friendly," I muttered to Chloe. "I think it adds to the charm," she whispered back, her eyes already alight with the thrill of the hunt. She disappeared into a rack of floral print dresses, her hand trailing over the fabrics. I wandered in the opposite direction, toward a section of menswear, suits from bygone eras hung like sloughed-off skins that I ran my fingers over the sleeve of a heavy wool frock coat. The fabric was coarse and thick, and then I felt it at a jolt, like a static shock, but colder. And with it, a whisper of sensation that wasn't my own, a profound aching loneliness so sharp and sudden it stole my breath that I yanked my hand back. "You okay?" Chloe asked, emerging from the dresses holding a sequin top up to her chest. The sequins caught the dim light, winking. "Yeah, fine. Static electricity," I said, shaking my hand. The feeling was already fading, leaving behind only a vague unease. "This place is a gold mine," she said, her excitement infectious. "Look at the craftsmanship on this." She turned to show me the back, and the movement pulled her t-shirt taut across her chest that I wasn't looking at the sequins, that I was watching the way the soft cotton stretched, outlining the curve of her breast beneath. My mouth went a little dry. It was such a normal human reaction, grotesquely out of place in this silent, watchful store. The contrast made me feel guilty, voyeuristic. That's when I saw him, that he was standing at the far end of the aisle, partially obscured by a hanging fur coat, that he wasn't looking at the clothes, that he was looking at us, that he was tall and gaunt, dressed in a modern, well-fitting black suit that looked absurdly out of place. His hair was dark, slicked back, and his face was pale and strangely unlined, though something in his eyes suggested he wasn't young. His gaze was intense, focused, and utterly devoid of warmth. It was the look a geologist might give an interesting rock formation. I looked away, a flush of discomfort warming my neck. When I glanced back a moment later, he was gone. "Did you see that guy?" I asked Chloe. "What guy?" She was now holding a cloche hat against her hair, studying her reflection in a tarnished full-length mirror. Tall, skinny guy in a suit. Looked like he just walked out of a Wall Street Journal from the 1920s. She shrugged, uninterested. "Nope, just us and Madame Defarge over there." She nodded toward the old woman, who was still clicking away. "I'm gonna try this on." She headed toward a curtained-off alcove in the back that presumably served as a fitting room. I stayed where I was, trying to shake the feeling of that man's gaze that I had felt, sticky, like cobwebs on my skin. I busied myself by looking at a case of watches and pocket watches, all frozen at different times. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my boss, reminding me about a donor meeting on Monday. The screen flickered oddly as I read it, the text distorting for a half-second into jagged lines before snapping back to normal. Weird? Probably just a glitch. The signal in here was probably terrible. The curtain to the fitting room rustled, and Chloe stepped out. She wasn't wearing the sequin top. She was wearing a dress that was a simple slip of a thing, navy blue silk, bias cut so that it clung to her every curve before whispering out around her knees. It was elegant and devastatingly sexy in its simplicity. "What do you think?" she asked, doing a slow turn. The silk moved with her, caressing her body. I could see the outline of her hips, the gentle swell of her backside, the way the fabric dipped low between her shoulder blades. My heart started hammering against my ribs, a frantic, panicked rhythm that was equal parts desire and something else. Something darker. She looked incredible, but she also looked different, older, sadder. The vibrant Chloe-ness of her seemed muted, filtered through this old, somber fabric. It's beautiful," I stammered. "It feels—" "I don't know," she said, running her hands down the front of the dress. Her fingers lingered on her stomach. "It feels that crazy?" Before I could answer, the old woman spoke for the first time. Her voice was like dry leaves skittering across pavement. "That one has a strong echo." We both jumped. She had appeared silently beside us, her knitting tucked under her arm. "An echo?" Chloe asked. The woman's pale eyes were fixed on the dress. Virginia Point, 1942. Her fiancé was lost at sea. The telegram came the day she bought this. She wore it once, to the memorial service. Never again. She reached out a bony, blue-veined hand and touched the silk at Chloe's shoulder. Chloe flinched. "The sorrow soaked right in, you can feel it, can't you? Cold? Like a draft that never goes away." A shiver went through Chloe. "Yet I can." She looked unsettled, her earlier excitement gone. I think I'll take it off." She retreated behind the curtain. The old woman turned her unsettling gaze on me. "They all have stories," Some are louder than others. Then she shuffled back to her stool. I stood there, frozen. The sorrow soaked right in. It was a ridiculous, superstitious thing to say, but the cold static from the frock coat, the feeling of profound loneliness, had that been an echo too? Chloe came out a minute later, back in her t-shirt and shorts, the navy dress draped over her arm. She looked spooked. Let's get out of here. We took the dress to the counter. The old woman rang it up on an ancient, manual cash register that chimed with a sound just as final and heavy as the doorbell. As Chloe handed over her credit card, I saw him again. The man in the black suit. He was outside, standing across the street, perfectly still, just watching the storefront, watching us. Chloe, I said, my voice low. She was signing the receipt, that guy, across the street. She looked up, followed my gaze. The man didn't move, didn't react to being observed. He just stood there, a stark black and white figure against the colorful, moving backdrop of the city. Okay, that's seriously creepy, she whispered. Let's go, now. We left the store, the clang of the doorbell sounding like a cell door slamming shut behind us. The bright Nashville sun was a shock to the system. I blinked, trying to readjust. Did you see him? I asked, turning to look across the street. He was gone. Maybe he was just waiting for someone, Chloe said, but she didn't sound convinced. She hugged the paper bag with the dress in it to her chest like a shield. We walked back to her Jeep quickly, not talking. The encounter had cast a pall over the afternoon. The easy, flirtatious energy was gone, replaced by a shared, nervous tension. I kept scanning the crowds, half expecting to see the pale man's face in every window, behind every pedestrian. I didn't. We decided to go back to my place. It felt safer than a crowded cafe. We ordered pizza, put on a dumb movie, tried to act normal. The navy dress, still in its bag, was placed on a chair in the corner of my living room. It felt like a third presence in the room, a silent, sorrowful guest. Halfway through the movie, Chloe curled up on the far end of the couch, tucking her feet underneath her. She was quiet, pensive. The setting sun streamed through the window, catching the fine golden hairs on her legs. I wanted to cross the space between us, to pull her against me, to feel the solid, warm reality of her and drive out the lingering chill from the shop. But the moment felt fractured. The desire was still there, but it was tangled up with the image of that man's cold eyes and the old woman's whisper about echoes. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. Another text. I picked it up. It was a photo. A blurry, poorly lit photo. It was taken from across the street, through the foggy window of echoes. It showed me and Chloe inside the store. I was turned away, looking at the watches. Chloe was holding the sequin top up to her chest, her head tilted. The angle was exactly where the man had been standing. My blood ran cold. There was no message, just the photo. The sender was listed as unknown. What is it? Chloe asked, noticing my expression. Nothing, I said too quickly, locking the phone and putting it face down. Spam. I couldn't show her, she was already freaked out. This would push her over the edge, and a selfish, male part of me didn't want to share this. This felt directed at me, that look he'd given me, it had been for me alone. The rest of the evening passed in a strained parody of normalcy. We finished the pizza. The movie ended, the sky darkened outside. Chloe yawned, stretching her arms over her head. The hem of her t-shirt rode up, exposing a sliver of toned stomach and the waistband of her shorts. The sight sent a fresh, unwanted jolt of lust through me, immediately followed by a wave of shame. Here I was, staring at her skin while some stalker had a photo of us. I should probably head out, she said, though she made no move to get up. You can stay, I said. The words were out before I could think about them. I mean, the couch pulls out. It's late, and after today, I trailed off. She looked at me, her green-gray eyes searching my face. She looked tired. Yeah, okay, that might be nice. We got the couch made up. The atmosphere was awkward, charged with all the things we weren't saying. I got her a spare toothbrush and a t-shirt to sleep in. When I handed it to her, our fingers brushed, her skin was warm. She looked up at me, and for a second I thought she might kiss me. I wanted her to. I also wanted to run out of the room. Good night, Mark, she said softly. Night, Chloe. I went to my bedroom and closed the door, leaning against it. I could hear the faint sounds of her moving around in the living room, the creak of the pull-out couch. I listened until everything was quiet. Sleep didn't come easily. Every creak of the old apartment building made me jump that I kept seeing the photo on my phone. The pale man's face that I must have drifted off eventually because the dream found me. I was in a room I didn't recognize, all dark wood and heavy velvet curtains that I was wearing the wool frock coat I'd touched in the store that it was tight across the shoulders that I felt a crushing weight of despair, a loneliness so absolute it was a physical pain in my chest that I was standing at a window, watching rain streak down the glass that I knew with the absolute certainty of dreams, that I was waiting for someone who was never coming home. I raised a hand to wipe the fog from the glass, and my reflection wasn't my own it was the pale man, his expression one of cold, clinical interest that he lifted his hand and placed it against the glass, mirroring mine. His palm was utterly white, the lines on it deep and dark like cracks in ice. I woke with a gasp, sitting bolt upright in bed. The room was dark that my heart was trying to punch its way out of my chest. The dream had felt so real, the emotions so visceral, they clung to me like a film. And then I heard it that a voice that it was coming from the living room that a low, murmuring whisper that it was Chloe's voice, but the cadence was all wrong that it was slower, older, dripping with a grief that made the hairs on my arms stand up that I crept out of bed and eased my door open. Just a crack. Chloe was standing in the middle of the living room. The moon provided the only light, casting her in silvery monochrome. She was wearing the navy blue slip dress. She was just standing there, swaying slightly, her arms wrapped around herself, and she was whispering over and over again, "Lost at sea, no body to bury, just the waves, just the empty waves." My blood turned to ice. She was asleep. She had to be. She was sleepwalking, reciting the story the old woman had told us, the echo. She turned slowly, her movements languid, dreamlike, her eyes were open, but they were glassy, unfocused, seeing something far away from my apartment. She took a step toward the window, then another, her bare feet silent on the floorboards. That I should have gone to her, that I should have woken her up, gently led her back to bed. But I was paralyzed. That it was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. This wasn't Chloe. This was the dress. This was Virginia from